Welcome back to the channel! You are catching us on the last leg of an amazing 7-day cruise around the Mediterranean on the MSC World Europa. This ship is absolutely amazing, and we've had a great time so far. Make sure you check out our previous videos to see all of the amazing ports we visited, restaurants we ate at, and entertainment we enjoyed. Good morning, guys. We are in beautiful and sunny Barcelona. It is the last day of our cruise. We disembark tomorrow in Marseille, but today we're in Barcelona. And we've been to Barcelona several times. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're actually going to do an excursion with the cruise line over to Montserrat, which is a monastery up in the mountains. It's supposed to be really cool. And then we're going to be doing some Spanish wine tasting, some sparkling wine tasting. So this should be an interesting excursion. I think we also take like a small city tour. Honestly, it's probably just them driving out of Barcelona saying, you know, this is this thing and this is the other thing. But it should be interesting nonetheless. At the end of this tour, we'll tell you how much we paid for it and what we thought of the experience of an excursion on MSC. So we're going to grab some breakfast really quickly. We have to be down at the World Theater at 8:15 a.m. We're apparently bus number 1, so we're assuming that we're going to be called fairly quickly to go down to the buses. But yeah, here we go. On this beautiful Spanish morning, we headed up to the Il Mercado buffet for a quick bite to eat. Luckily, we were in port early enough on this morning where the buffet crowd was actually very manageable. That's at least one perk of being up early on these morning excursion days. From the buffet, we headed straight down to the World Theater, which was the meeting point for the Barcelona shore excursions today. When you go on a tour with MSC, you'll receive a tour ticket in your stateroom at least one night before the excursion. This ticket gives you all of the meeting information for your excursion, so make sure you bring the ticket with you and arrive on time. We walked out to a bus with the shore excursion group and made our way out of the port. Our tour guide gave us a very quick tour of the Barcelona harbor, the Olympic harbor, and the Sagrada Familia church. We have been to this church before in one of our last trips to Barcelona, so if you haven't seen that video before, make sure you check it out. This church is absolutely massive, and it's an extremely important symbol of this city. We were very glad that our bus driver did a lap around this church to make sure that everyone on our bus had a chance to see it. This little city tour lasted about 30 minutes, and then we headed south out of Barcelona. The bus that we were on today was fairly comfortable, and thank goodness it had air conditioning. It was going to be hot out there today. Our driver got us on the highway and drove for about an hour before arriving at our first stop, a real Cava vineyard. We found out from our tour guide that Cava is the name for Spanish sparkling wine, and it's mainly produced in this area of Catalonia. We were at the Villarnu winery, and we were handed off to a guide from the winery who gave us a quick history of Cava production, as well as the short story of this local producer. We were led around the winery, and eventually we found ourselves in a very wooded area. Just walking through a vineyard, and now we're in a forest for some reason.
Yeah, it's quite a journey.
Yeah, but I think we got something going on up here. Eventually, we made it to the main production area. We learned more about Cava production at this particular winery, and then we went inside to see all of the bottles filled with Cava that was being aged. It was quite a sight to see all of these wine bottles. From there, we went back outside and received a small tasting of the Cava produced here. If we wanted, we could of course go up and buy an additional full glass for €2. We also had access to the shop of the winery, but we decided not to buy any bottles here. Well, that was very good. We got one glass of Cava, so sparkling wine, basically the champagne of this region of Spain. But it was pretty good, and then a little snack. But now we're heading back to the bus and going to Montserrat. The drive to Montserrat was actually very scenic. There are tons of vines all along the way, and eventually we found ourselves in a seemingly secluded river valley. We could even see the massive cable cars taking people up from the valley floor to the Abbey on top of this nearly 4,000-foot mountain.
After stopping for some photo ops, our bus started climbing up the winding road to the top of the mountain and the Abbey of Montserrat. To be honest, it was a very windy road, and if you suffer from car sickness, you might want to skip this excursion. We made it to the top and got off the bus, heading towards the monastery. This abbey was first built back in 1025, after it was said that a statue of the Virgin Mary was found in this spot. In fact, this is a black Madonna that's extremely special in this part of Spain. You can still find the figurine in the monastery and see it for a fee. This mountain is special to the region, and it's known as being a very calm and relaxing retreat away from everyday life. There are pilgrims that come to this mountain every day, and there's even a hostel of sorts at the monastery for those traveling to Montserrat for reflection. There are still 70 to 80 monks who still live at the monastery, and the mountain and the abbey remain an important part of religious life in Catalonia. The monastery and basilica here are very impressive, and the views from up here are just outstanding. There is no wonder why this place was considered to be one of the greatest retreats for centuries. This is pretty neat, huh?
Yeah, it's an amazing view up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just unbelievable.
So as you come out of Barcelona, you start to see Montserrat in the way distance, and it's a really unique looking mountain range. And even up close, it still just looks really jagged and weird. So Montserrat actually means serrated mountain, and it definitely looks like that from afar and up close.
Today there are several hiking trails up on top of the mountain as well, some of which lead further up to the summit, and some of which go around the mountain to several other buildings and shrines. In addition to the basilica, the monastery, the trails, and the statues, Montserrat also hosts a museum. This museum started in 1911 as a biblical museum, but has now expanded to be one of the most visited art museums in Catalonia. Our tour guide gave us nearly 2.5 hours of free time up in the monastery, which was more than enough to see everything we wanted to, as well as to take a short hike should we feel adventurous. To be honest though, we hadn't had lunch yet and it was nearing 3 p.m., so we decided to stop off at the Montserrat cafeteria after getting our fill of the Abbey. We should say this came at an extra charge.
Yeah, so this tour went up to Montserrat, but we also went to a Cava vineyard and got some wine. The total price was $70 per person, which honestly for a cruise excursion is not that bad. There wasn't really anything included, but overall for the transportation, that's pretty much what you would find on Viator or TripAdvisor. Plus this way, now we don't have to worry about getting back to the port, because the Barcelona port, it's not difficult to get into, but there's a lot of steps you have to take if you're not taking a bus directly there. You can always take a taxi, but of course that's always more expensive.
From there, we went over and waited for the rest of our group to get back on the bus. And soon we were heading back down the mountain towards Barcelona. It had been a long day, but for people like us who had already seen Barcelona several times, it was worth it to see something new. We arrived back at the ship and made our way back to the stateroom, ready to rest our eyes for a bit before the evening.
Alright guys, so it is our last night of the cruise. Unfortunately, we got our luggage tags. If you haven't been on a cruise before, usually how it works is the last night of the cruise, you'll get your tags for your luggage. It's usually indicated by a number or a color. Here on MSC, you're given a number, and then you're given a disembarkation information sheet that tells you what time you have to be off the ship based on that number. So we have to be off the ship by 8:45 tomorrow morning. We have to be out of our cabin even earlier by 8 a.m. So usually what we do is we will go up to breakfast, enjoy ourselves for the last hour or so. And then The way MSC does it is you actually have to meet in a location on the ship. Not how other cruise lines normally do it. Usually you just have to be off the ship by a certain time. But here you have to meet at a certain location and then they'll escort you off the ship. So a little bit bummed about that, but we're not going to let that get us down on this last night. We are about to go out. We're going to enjoy ourselves on the ship, maybe take in a show. We are also going to go to teppanyaki tonight, or actually Kaito Sushi Bar. There's Kaito Sushi Bar and Kaito Teppanyaki. Teppanyaki is more the hibachi style grill, and then Kaito Sushi Bar is a sushi bar. So we are going to go to the sushi bar. We went to Kaito Sushi Bar on the MSC Poesia, and it was actually really good. Also, the prices are reasonable. This is a specialty dining experience, so we are going to have to pay for it, unfortunately. But the food at the specialty restaurants has been really good so far, so we're not too worried about it. We're going to enjoy ourselves some sushi tonight.
It wasn't long before we pulled out of the port of Barcelona, and with that we made our way down to the sushi bar. Kaito Teppanyaki and Sushi Bar is located right off of the main atrium area, or the World Galleria, and it's very easy to find. We were seated at the bar, and we took a look at the menu. This menu has a lot of decent items on it, but we decided to just go with some basic starters and sushi rolls. We did also like that you could find Japanese beer here too, acai. We ordered some teriyaki chicken, prawns, and a few sushi rolls. All of the food was very good. We were full, so we didn't really want to order dessert, but the waiter insisted and brought out some free matcha ice cream for us to try, which was a great way to end the meal.
So now we're going to go to a couple of shows tonight, maybe hang out around the ship, grab a drink. We do have one show that Catherine's really looking forward to called Amelia, and it's about Amelia Earhart. Don't know how they're going to do a stage show about Amelia Earhart, but we're very curious to find out. And then later we're going to actually go to a show in the Panorama Lounge. So we're looking forward to those shows tonight.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
I didn't really mean it when I started looking up at the sky.
Well, your imagination has served you well, Amelia.
Did you know that I was...
Hey guys, so we need to talk about that theater show, Amelia. It was odd. Now, if you've seen our videos before, you know that we think that the MSC Cruise Entertainment, it's entertaining, but it's a little bit untraditional if you're used to the Broadway shows or things like that on other cruise lines. Because there are so many different cultures on board these ships at all times, they tend to stay away from things that focus on language or singing in one particular language. A lot of the stage shows are more acrobatics, aerial moves, jugglers, things like that. Things that are very out of the norm if you go on an American cruise line. But this Amelia show was interesting. We didn't know what to expect, to be honest. We walked in and we saw this huge metal ball in the middle of the stage, and there were people walking around almost like Nightmare Before Christmas meets, 18th century, 19th century people walking around in these costumes with lanterns, and it was just very odd. So in this show, they had an acrobatic routine, they had a juggler, they had motorcycles flying around this ball thing, and all the while, it's sort of, and I say sort of because it's not really telling the story of Amelia Earhart, but they're interspersing it with Amelia Earhart, like talking about how she loves flying, and they talk about kind of how she got lost and saw all of these amazing creatures and things like that. But to be honest, to us, it seemed like they lined up all of these acrobatics, jugglers, motorcycle acts, and then kind of tried to come up with a story where they could just use them all. It was very odd. Would we go again? No, not to this show. It was only 40 minutes, so it wasn't too long, and it was fine. I mean, it kind of ran the same as the rest of the MSC Entertainment usually does. It's just fine. It keeps you entertained for 40 minutes, and that's all you can ask, really, right? I mean, there's not Broadway shows. The price on these cruises definitely reflects that there's not Broadway shows. So with the entertainment, we thought it was just okay. Then we went to the Panorama Lounge, and that was much more like the entertainment we saw on the MSC Poesia. It was just singing and dancing, basically, 80s disco hits. So that was pretty good as well. That was a 45-minute show back in the Panorama Lounge, which is absolutely beautiful. And the lighting in there is spectacular. It's such a neat venue. For both of these, we did need to reserve an appointment ahead of time. But then 5 minutes before the show, they do let everyone in who doesn't have a reservation. But if everyone who's reserved does get there and scans their card, there might not be a way for you to get in because they do have capacity limits in these venues. So there's been a few times on this cruise where we wanted to see a show, but we can't because we don't wake up early enough to reserve right away when it comes out in the morning. So if these theater shows are important to you, make sure that you're watching the app for when the show times drop and you can reserve your booking to go to those shows.
If live entertainment is not your thing, there are also several things you can do in your stateroom to keep you entertained. If you haven't already, make sure you check out our stateroom and ship tour on our channel. The television in the stateroom does have several channels that can keep you busy. These channels come in multiple languages, and you can even watch live TV and sporting events. With the TV in your room, you can also access cruise information and your cruise account. You can even see a forward-facing camera straight from the bridge. If you're looking for a movie, you can also find those here. There is a selection of movies on the MSC TV, but it's definitely not the same that you would find on your TV at home. Just be aware that you're going to be spending a decent chunk of change for these titles. With that, we headed out for our last night on the ship. We made sure to check out the World Promenade section and enjoy one last light show before disembarking. And we even caught some live music in one of the many bars on board. We had a great time on this cruise, and it was sad that it was coming to an end. The next morning, we woke up in the port of Marseille. We had to be out of our stateroom by 8 a.m., so we headed down to the Hexagon restaurant for breakfast. The Hexagon restaurant is one of the 4 main dining rooms on board. On most MSC cruises, you'll find that at least one of the main dining rooms will be open for breakfast and lunch in addition to dinner service each day. This morning, it was Hexagon, and we ordered some food before shoving off. To be honest, though, it was probably the most disappointing meal of the whole cruise. How is it?
It's okay. You know, it feels like basically buffet quality pancakes.
Yeah.
And they put the syrup on already, like it came with syrup on it, which I thought was a little weird.
Even though Catherine didn't like her food, I really did enjoy my Eggs Benedict. We'd had such a great time on the MSC World Europa. It really is a world-class ship. Even though the food and service of MSC could use some work, we did enjoy ourselves on this cruise. Make sure you check out our other videos in our MSC World Europa series, as well as our tour of the MSC World Europa and a balcony stateroom. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.